So thank you everyone for who's joining us today. I know that this is either a long weekend or a spring break for a lot of people, and we do appreciate you giving us your time. As Jared mentioned, I'm Jonathan Williams, and I'm joined today by two of the division's senior water resources control engineers, Cheryl Prowl and Danya Jimerson, who you may know from the board's work on the wastewater needs assessment. Additionally, I think we may have Rafael Mesu, a research data scientist with the board's Office of Information Management and Analysis online today. And then last but not least, our intern, Faith Sunga. So together, we should be hopefully able to answer any questions that you have. But before we get into it, Cheryl's going to give us a little bit of an overview on just the Zoom instructions in case anyone has any issues.
Great. And I think we're all pros at Zoom by now, but we are in the webinar mode. So there's a few things that are just a little bit different. You are in a listen and participate role. We do have closed captions turned on today. So if that's helpful to you and you'd like to follow along with closed captions, please click on the CC button. It's either in the bottom of the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. It might be in the More icon, which is the circle with three dots. Please note that we will not be taking questions through the chat feature today. The chat is only enabled for the panelists to send information to you. And we would like to get questions from you through the Q&A feature. The Q&A feature, to use that, please click on the Q&A button on the bottom of the toolbar and type your questions. We'll try to answer as many of them as we can in typing real time, and we may hold some of them to the end. We do have a Q&A section at the end of the presentation. Send as many questions as you want, but we do ask that you send them one at a time so that we can respond to each one fully. And with that, I'll hand it back to Jonathan for the main part of the presentation. Thank you.
And sorry about that, guys. Actually, Spencer or Cheryl, can I get you, if we haven't done it already, to put the link to the Microsoft Forms questionnaire in the chat, as well as the Excel version of the questionnaire, if that's possible, because that might help people.
Will do.
Thank you. So we've been made aware that the state's been sending out a lot of questionnaires and surveys recently, and it's not our intention to give you guys survey fatigue, but we hope that you see the value in participating in our questionnaire. Participation is entirely voluntary, but strongly encouraged because the data collected will help us to better prioritize investments to support improvements for wastewater systems. In particular, the data collected will help to complement and advance the efforts of the wastewater needs assessment. It's one thing to say that more investment is needed to support wastewater systems, but it's a much stronger argument to be able to back that up, back that statement up with real data. With the drinking water needs assessment, a similar data collection effort led to a significant increase in resources for drinking water infrastructure. And it's our hope that this data will help to do something similar for wastewater systems. So this effort's really entirely meant to benefit questionnaire participants. As Jared mentioned, the data collected will allow us to backfill the wastewater rate data for 2019 through 2025. The Water Board previously collected rate data from 2012 through 2018, but stopped due to conflicting demands. Currently, this is planned as a one-time data gathering effort, but depending on resources and your support, we may release the questionnaire again. I know that our staff see the value in collecting this data, so if you want to see this effort continue into the future, we strongly encourage you to continue working with CASA to push for its continuation. The tentative plan is for us to have results to present to the Water Board during the July 7th board meeting. And I say right now tentative because we hope to have enough participation that we'll have meaningful data to present to the board by July. So this first slide contains the most important information that you need concerning the questionnaire. First and most importantly, if you did not receive an email from me last Friday, please email me and I'll send you the questionnaire information at the end of the webinar. However, for this presentation, you can access both versions of the survey. Hopefully the links are in there now in the chat, and you can kind of follow along as we go through the survey. The email that I sent out contains a link to the Microsoft Forms version of the survey, along with 3 attachments, including the flyer advertising this webinar, a README file with questionnaire instructions, and an Excel version of the questionnaire. We ask that survey responses be submitted to us online through the Microsoft Forms questionnaire. However, we recommend using the Excel version of the questionnaire to record your responses so that you can save and come back to your work. Unfortunately, the Microsoft Forms platform does not allow you to save and return to your responses. We did look into using other questionnaire platforms, but the state is unfortunately limited in the licenses that we're allowed to use. So there are a total of 145 questions, and I realize that this may sound somewhat daunting for what we're advertising as a streamlined survey. But if you viewed the version of the survey piloted by CASA a few months ago, all the questions are essentially the same. We just made some additional clarifications and had to revamp some of the questions to fit the Microsoft Forms platform. Additionally, most of the questions are repetitive and are just the same rate questions being asked repeatedly for the different years that we're trying to backfill data for. As I've said, the survey is voluntary, but the more questions and information that you're able to provide to us, the more useful the data from this questionnaire is going to be in the long run. The questions are designed to help the water boards get a better understanding of the wastewater rates landscape throughout the entire state. So not every question may be applicable to your organization. In the Microsoft Forms version of the survey, you can skip over questions if something is not applicable or you do not have the time to chase down the information. The most important components of the survey are really your contact information, the rate data, and then the three service area questions that we're going to talk about a little bit more later. Having said that, the more detailed first set of questions are really useful in providing data that illustrates a statewide need for increased investment in wastewater systems, as well as gives our staff information that we can use to respond to inquiries that we get from entities like the governor's office. I know Jared said 45 minutes. That's possible. We estimate that it'll take from like maybe 1 to 3 hours to complete the survey. It really just depends on how much time you need to spend finding information. If you have all the information right in front of you, it might even take less than 45 minutes. All the information collected through the questionnaire will be made publicly available on the California Open Data Portal, which is also where you can go to find the questionnaire data from 2012 through the 2018 period. With that said, do not share any information that you're not comfortable with being made available to the public. And this is really particularly the case for any personal contact information that you have. Just make sure that you're only using work contact information. I assume that because you've all taken the time to participate in this webinar that you intend on responding to the questionnaire, but we could also really use your help to get the word out and encourage other agencies to participate. If the length of the questionnaire is too much, encourage them just to provide their contact information, the rate data, and the information about their service area. While we're asking everyone to submit their response online, if the effort is too time consuming for smaller agencies, they can just submit their responses in the Excel document via email back to me. However, we ask that agencies only do this as a last resort because if everyone sends us Excel files, it's going to take literally months to get all the data entered. We're here to help, so please reach out with any questions. Email is the best way to contact us. We have limited staff dedicated to this project, but we are committed to responding to all of your messages. Just know that we might not be able to get back to you right away. CASA has also graciously offered to put together an FAQ document where we'll record questions and answers to any of the questions that we receive, including the ones during this webinar. And then a recording of the webinar is also will be made available if anyone is unable to attend or wants to re-review what was discussed. Lastly, we're asking that everyone get their responses to us by May 15th so that we can have time to process the data before the board meeting in July. I'm going to leave the questionnaire open so that the responses can continue to be collected, but after May 15th, we'll need to start organizing and processing the data. And then with that, I will pause if there are any questions on anything that I've said so far. And Cheryl, if you could just let me know if anyone's typing in anything or if anything's come up.
Just wanted to remind folks, there is an Excel sheet in the chat and it was emailed out, and it's a great way to follow along as Jonathan goes through his presentation to see exactly how the questions are in the Excel sheet.
And we just have one question so far that Mary was able to answer in the chat. So
Oh, perfect.
we're good.
Hi, thanks. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to walk through the different sections of the survey using screenshots from the Excel questionnaire, and then I'll show you the same section in the Microsoft Forms version of the questionnaire. We'll not be going through every question in detail because that'd probably be too tedious for everyone, but I will give an overview of each section and why we're asking for the information. Feel free to follow along using the documents which are available in the chat, and if you have questions about specific questions in any of the sections, I'll pause at the end of each section to give people time to type in questions. And if your question doesn't get answered, again, just look at my email, send it to me, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Um, if there are no questions, this webinar will probably go really quickly. I imagine only 10 to 15 minutes or less. So, use the time and ask anything any burning questions that you have. So right now we're looking at the Excel version of the questionnaire. We're looking at the view in the Info tab. There's a general information here about the purpose of the survey, links to the privacy statement, and the California Open Data Portal. Additionally, you can access the Microsoft Forms questionnaire through the electronic survey submission link. And we're asking JPAs, even if they do not charge directly to customers, to provide us with information on their treatment facilities, budgets, and average flows, as the information could still be useful to us. I want to draw your attention to the bottom of the page where you'll see the different Excel tabs for the different years. There's a separate tab for each year, with each tab containing the same rate questions. The first info tab contains the first 62 questions, which are all related to getting a better understanding of the rate environment that each agency is operating under. And then there's also a final tab for projected future rates if applicable to your agency. So this first section of the questionnaire is probably one of the most important. This is just your contact information. Please remember to fill in the contact information in the Microsoft Forms version of the questionnaire, as it doesn't automatically collect your information. And this is going to be also really useful to us going forward because our current contact list is a little out of date, and it'll be great to get up-to-date contacts on all of your agencies. Uh, Down here. All right. So feel free to type anything in the chat as I'm talking about this. It's the exact same content and information in the Microsoft Forms version of the questionnaire. It's a little cleaner, and you can directly click on the links for the Water Board's privacy statement and the link to the California Open Data Portal. As I move through these slides, you're going to probably note that it's like question 1, 2, 3, and then we jump to 11. I'm just showing this so you guys have an overview of what the actual Microsoft questionnaire looks like. The Excel versions that I'm going to be showing will have all the questions available to you. In the Microsoft Forms version of the questionnaire, you just keep clicking next and it'll bring you to the next section. And so there's no need to scroll through any additional tabs or anything like that. It literally just the next button will just keep progressing you through the questionnaire. I will pause there if there are any questions, Cheryl.
No, nothing new.
All right, perfect. We might get through this pretty quickly then. So the service area section, it's only 3 questions. Here examples from both the Excel version and Microsoft Forms version of the questionnaire are shown. The purpose of these questions is to gather information on the size of the community being served, where they're located, and then the socioeconomic status of the community. And like I said, this is the other section in addition to your contact information and rates data that would be really useful to have some information about. I know recently I had been talking about, the governor's office getting in contact with the water boards for additional information. And recently, the wastewater needs assessment actually received a question regarding the agencies that they had identified and the numbers of people that are being affected by each of those systems. And so having this kind of information would be really useful for us to answer some of those questions. So in the facility information section, these questions that are questions that pertain to the names and locations of the facilities that you're operating, your waste discharge identification number, and permits associated with those facilities. We had an early question come in regarding whether you need to submit all watershed permits, and the answer is no. You do not. You just need to submit the permits associated with the facilities that you've listed. If you cannot fit all the information in the space provided, I realized as I was going through this that some of you may have a whole lot of facilities. just list the information for the facility or facilities with the largest discharges. Between that and your contact information, we should be able to look up all the other facilities that you're operating. But this will give us a good start in being able to do that. We also have a few questions about your budgetary expenses, and this is just to get an idea of what financial demands agencies are currently dealing with. Um, and so this is again what it's going to look like in the Microsoft Forms version of the questionnaire. Again, you're just going to hit next to advanced through to the next slides. Any other questions, Cheryl? Or are we still good?
There is a
Okay.
question in the chat. It's about the service areas, and it asks if you provide treatment service to satellite collection systems, should you include them as part of your service area?
Satellite cruise missile. Yes, I would say yes. And actually, you know what? Let me go back because there was one other thing I forgot to mention here. We don't have a question to address this, and I don't know how applicable this is to the agencies on this webinar, but if there's a situation also where you are a billing agency, but you are contracting out your wastewater services to another agency, note that in probably question 15. That would be good for us to know. So in other words, you don't actually operate facilities yourself, but you are contracting that service out and billing customers. That would be good for us to know if that even exists. So between questions 22 and 23 in the Microsoft Forms questionnaire, you're going to be asked to upload your capital improvement plan. In the Excel questionnaire, there's just going to be this statement that I'm showing here in bold, just letting you know to be prepared to do that in the Microsoft Forms version of the questionnaire. So you'll see in the Microsoft Forms version of the questionnaire, this question right here. All you need to do is click on the URL. Another tab is going to probably pop open in your browser, and it's going to show you this Waterboard's FTP login page. I recommend just copying and pasting the username from up here and the password into those cells. And the username and password are the same for everybody. Once you do that, just click sign in and you're going to be presented with this disclaimer. The disclaimer is really just you agreeing to not misuse any state resources. You'll be able to upload essentially anything into the FTP site. I ask that you only upload capital improvement plans, though. Otherwise, it's going to get pretty messy. So just click the box confirming that you agree to the terms and then click OK. And then you'll be presented with this image right here, drawing your attention to the upper left-hand corner. You're going to want to select Upload. This is all pretty simple. Once you do that, it may open a document folder already for you along with this image right here. And you can either go directly into your document folder, select your CIP, or you can click Upload Files, select the CIP, and then it should appear in this first window again. You won't have the ability to delete anything out of here, but if you accidentally upload something, that's not a big deal. Just shoot me an email and I'll go ahead and take it out. Okay, any questions about that?
No, looks good.
All right, sweet. So the next section is agencies' roles and responsibilities. We realize that question 23 is very similar to question 15. We're just asking this again to help us quickly get stats on the number of agencies managing the different types of facilities. We have several questions related to the average discharges for your facilities. If you operate more than one, provide a combined average for all of them. And then we have several questions pertaining to how your agency charges customers for wastewater service, as well as the level of treatment that your facility or facilities treat to. And then again, just this is the same image of the Microsoft Forms version. And again, you'll just click next after answering those questions. Cheryl, actually, instead of me asking you every time, how about just interrupt me if you see some questions pop into the chat? That'll probably be easier.
Will do. Thanks.
All right, no worries. So overall rate information questions. These are questions related to billing frequency, rate structure, your sources of revenue, and other charges that might appear on a ratepayer's bill, in addition to wastewater service fees. We're asking these questions to get a better understanding of the existing financial burdens on ratepayers and what other revenues agencies have available to them in addition to billing customers. Again, this information is useful if we're having conversations around wastewater infrastructure improvements because it may help to highlight the need for outside investments if we want those improvements to be realized. And I will go very slowly through these to give everyone time to view them because there's a couple slides of these questions. And then, of course, there's the Microsoft Forms version, which looks like this. So again, I'm throwing up the first slide I showed for the introductory section of the Excel questionnaire. And this is just to remind everybody that the rate information for the individual years, again, is in these separate tabs below. So if you're using the Excel questionnaire, just remember to kind of advance through these and insert your information so that you have it available to you when you start putting it into the Microsoft Forms version. For each year, it's the same questions, like I said. So you got 8 questions. I'm only going to show you 2025, 2026, because it's pretty simple for the most part. But again, you'll see these exact same questions for each of these years below in the Excel spreadsheet. And we're just asking for the number of sewer counts, the wastewater for single family, number of sewer counts, wastewater user rate, connection fees. And then if there's any like nuances that we're not capturing in our questions, right here, this additional comment section is probably a good place to put that information and just let us know about it. And then the same questions again for multifamily. In the Microsoft Forms version of the questionnaire, single family residences, it's going to be its own page. You'll hit next, and then it'll take you to multifamily. This is probably the most tedious part of the questionnaire because you're just going to have to keep hitting next to advance through all the different years, but it should be pretty simple for the most part.
Jonathan, we've
Yeah,
got
go
a
ahead.
question from Debbie Mackey. For counties that provide sewer services to multiple special districts that may have very different rates, I'm hearing that you may want all those combined. Is that correct?
Yes, I think, if we're talking about the volumes, yes, you can combine all of that, I think. Like, that should work.
But what if the rate structure is different for the different?
So that's where I was getting at the question of if you're, like contracting out to a different entity, and this might be something that it's good for us to have like a sidebar conversation about with these
Mhm.
entities to get a better understanding of how this works. But that's where I'm also a little concerned that we were missing some of these smaller agencies that, part of the wastewater treatment system processes is they're working with a bigger or larger sort of parent agency. And if they're charging separate rates or they have a different rate system, it's probably good for us to get them in here and answering some of these questions, I think. So if your rate system is different, like I think from what I'm understanding or what you're saying here is that you charge rates to a certain number of customers, but you're also um, providing a service to other agencies that are charging additional rates. Is that correct? I
So
think what,
that is definitely one thing that happens, what
okay,
you
okay,
just
good.
identified. There's another, I think, case that Debbie may be asking about, and also another question just came in where there's counties where they're the administrator for multiple small wastewater collection districts. So they might each have a completely different rate base, different number of customers, and the rates are based on the expenses for those, specific small sewer districts. Should they be filling out the survey multiple times for each of those districts, or do you just want one of them, or do you want some sort of composite, or how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding this correctly, you're saying that each of those special districts is charging rates, right, to their ratepayers within their
Correct.
jurisdiction. Yeah, in that
Mhm.
case, I think what we want, and this is a good example for the outreach section, right? If you can send this survey to them, we want them to fill out this survey on their own, basically, we're for their area and give us an idea of their rate structure.
So I think in some cases it's the same person perhaps, but they would fill it out on behalf of multiple
Yes, multiple different entities. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because our survey, the reason why is that our survey would only be able, the way the questions are laid out, you can kind of see they'd only be able to capture sort of one situation
Yeah.
for one entity at a time. And so we would need like
Hmm.
multiple surveys for multiple entities. I didn't realize it's the same person in some cases filling out all this
Sometimes.
information. So if
Sometimes,
that's I
yeah,
apologize if that's the case. Yeah, if you can fill out separate, I know it's gonna be pretty tedious for you if you could fill out separate survey or questionnaires, but just include the same contact information so we know that it's you. That's something that I think we didn't anticipate. So good to know that that's the case.
And I will say, if that's too cumbersome, filling it out once with some sort of average rate, some sort of composite, that would still be really helpful data.
Yeah.
And it's okay to skip questions, so give us as much data as possible because the more data we have, the more useful the data set is as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are experts at what you do and understand what you do a lot better than we do. So, if it makes sense, I think to do that, and it's easier to do it that way, I think you can go ahead and just submit like a composite response.
great. I think we answered those questions live that had come into the chat, but if there's follow-up questions, please add those in.
Yeah, and if it's something special that we're not understanding, also get in touch with us and kind of explain that to us because this really helps just on our end to get it. Like I said, we're trying to understand better the wastewater rates landscape, and we don't know a lot on our end. So the more that you can educate us, the better off we're going to be in being able to make decisions too. So like I said, in the Excel tab, there is that last tab for future rates estimates. It's really for 2026, 2027, 2027, 2028, 2028, 2029. In the Excel tab, it's all shown in that one same last tab. If you don't have future rate estimates, don't worry about this. Just select no. If you're in the Microsoft Forms questionnaire, just keep hitting next, leave those questions blank, and you're eventually going to hit this, see the submit button, then just go ahead and submit your questionnaire. If you do have that information available to you, please go ahead and provide it to us. And the questions are pretty much exactly the same as these up here. It just obviously there's not going to be the number of sewer accounts question that won't be there, just because obviously it's the future and you won't know what those are. Um, yeah, so this is the last page. Just hit submit, and when you do, you're going to see just this, and this is how you know this message that your response was submitted, and that's how you know that it's been registered with us. If you have any questions, like I said, please feel free to contact me. I know I'm saying we're going to be available. Tomorrow is a state holiday, so if I don't get back to you till Wednesday, that's the reason. And then in addition, as you're going through this, we've already had some internal comments regarding like ways that we could improve this survey. If you have any suggestions, I'm trying to put a document together so that we can just note what those are, note sort of like maybe things that we're not capturing correctly in the questionnaire. And that way, if we do submit this again, we can make those improvements in the future. And
And Jonathan, we
yeah,
do have a question about small systems. The question is, would you want information from districts that are under 1 mile? And they're clarifying that these are systems that are not in CWICs.
not in CWICs. Yeah, I think that information would be useful. I mean, if it's to me, the way I think about this is if it's any district that has a pool of customers that they are charging rates to, we want that information recorded in here, even if it's very, very tiny. And I didn't really bring this up when I was talking about the need for um, trying to get as many responses as we can. Part of that is we really want those small data points. Oftentimes, it's probably those tiny districts that are in most need of additional investments or most need are going to be in the future in need of the most financial assistance. And so if we can capture those, it's great to get you guys who are really big entities who represent huge portions of the state, but to really get accurate data, we want to get it, geographically statewide and even from very, very, very tiny entities if we can. Any other questions?
There was a similar question about a city with two sewer divisions with two different rates. So similar type of issue. I feel like we probably want separate answers if they are like separate systems from a regulatory perspective. They're in CWICs with two different IDs,
Yes.
but not if it's like just two parts of the same city that are being charged different rates. But explore that a little bit. How would you like?
Yeah, and I think it would depend on the degree of differences between the two of them and how the wastewater rates are being charged to those two different sections of the city. Another thing I would bring up that's kind of important here too that we want to know about is if there's like a very massive socioeconomic difference potentially between the two different sections of the city. It might be good to say that, hey, this is representative of this portion of the population, whereas these rates are representative of a different portion of the population. If the way they're being billed is different, this is good for us to know too. So like if it's we have those questions in the overall rate section. If the way the wastewater rates are being combined with other charges are different, let us know. If there's also differences in the way that the agencies are getting funding to manage those systems, that is also really important for us. So if it's like we have a question in there, I see Mary looking a little. You're,
Well, how do they do that though? Because there's really only one form
so
field.
let's
So to fill it out and then make a note or
Or yeah, you could do that. I think the best way to do it though is if they are different, fill out two different. Again, it's a situation where it's best to have two different versions of the survey,
okay.
right? Because the
All right.
response, that's what I'm trying to get as the responses
Sure.
would be different, right?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So that's the ultimate tool for providing nuances to fill it out multiple times. If you feel that
Yes.
you cannot combine it using the form somehow or with notes, then fill it out twice.
Yeah, and I would say use your best professional judgment. If the differences are fairly nuanced and they can be combined, go ahead and submit it as one. The data will still be useful. But like I said, if we got a lot of different, special little districts out there that are billing in different ways, it's probably best to submit the individual because there's going to be some nuance there that'd be good for us to capture.
Great.
And Jonathan, there's another question about commercial rates. What about commercial rates? Are you wanting those as well? They don't see them in the questionnaire.
Yeah, so we're only looking at residential rates, excuse me, residential rates in this survey. I believe there are three questions in there for non-residential rates, and we're just sort of combining those into two questions. Again, it was like Jared was mentioning kind of at the beginning of this. The purpose of this was really to simplify the questionnaire a bit. And so we're really just looking at residential rate data. That's really all we need here.
Great.
Um, we're pretty much done here, guys. So if you don't have any additional questions, we can actually leave it open and we can sit here for a while if anyone has any thoughts.
I've
Um,
got some questions, Jonathan,
go
from
for
as
it.
you went through the
Yeah.
survey, if that's okay.
Yeah.
One of the questions was, what's the median household income in your service area? And my question was, what if you don't really know that information? Is there a good place to look that up? Danya put in the chat internally amongst our crew an answer to that. Do you want to share that, Danya?
Sure. Be happy to. Yes. So the American Community Census Survey, which is published by the United States Census Bureau, they release every year in increments of 5 years the median household income for different CDPs or cities and small communities. So, and the good thing is that that's pretty reliable information, so much so that the Division of Financial Assistance, that's what they use to make ultimately their determinations with all the in-house projects related to wastewater consolidation, regionalization, or capital improvement, and for determining grants and all of that. So that's a tool that we all use for to assist different communities. So right now we are using the 2023 American Community Survey and includes the years from 2019 to 2023. But I believe the 2024 is about to be released, but we are still using the 2023. So that would be a good approximation. I mean, even if you are using one that is a couple of years behind. So
Okay, great. My next question was, there was two questions about location on the survey. One of them is question 15, and it asks, it's kind of like an open text box. Please list the names and locations of the treatment facilities. I don't know if you are able to go to a slide, Jonathan, that has that.
Yeah, I can back up all the way over. Hang on. Let's see, I think that's question 15, right?
Yes, I just wasn't sure, like, what are you looking for here? Because later there's a checkbox where you can click off like collection system treatment
Yeah,
on
so
the next page. But what do you want here?
yeah. So I think this is just this we included this question to get a better idea of the individual facilities that a particular agency is managing and where they are located. So this is more specific information. Actually, Faith, our intern, commented on this when she was also editing and going through the survey that this is really similar to question number 23. The reason why question number 23 is in there is that that's a really sort of simplified version of this question, right?
Mhm.
And so if we're looking at all of the agencies statewide, we can use that question just to say like, okay, these are the number of facilities throughout the entire state that are being operated under this category. And
Right.
then it's just a way of really dividing it up for, I think, for like statistical purposes for us. It makes it a bit easier.
Okay, so
And
the checkbox is one, and then this is like if you want any narrative description to kind of supplement that, explain it a bit further.
Yeah, oftentimes it's useful for us to know what facilities a particular agency is operating and where it's just located. And I know people are probably saying, well, don't we give you all that information already through the regional boards? You do. It's just, remember that we're a little siloed here at the water boards at times, and
Mhm.
we're a really big agency. So the regions have that information. We don't really necessarily quickly have that information at our disposal here at headquarters. And so this just helps us really get that information quickly.
there's starting to be a couple more questions in the Q&A feature. One of them is from an agency that provides wastewater services to half of the city. And they're asking if they should still use the income from the Census Bureau for the entire city.
I see. That's a great question. I would think that if you're able to break it down, right, and if there's a way to do that, I'm thinking that I think Cal EnviroScreen, Don, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that also has some socioeconomic data in it too. If there's a way to look at that potentially within a city, I don't want people to have to expend too much effort into doing this. If you can only provide the information for the entire city, go ahead and do that. If you can think of a good reason though, right, for one section of the city maybe is very different from a socioeconomic perspective than the rest of the city, that would be a nuance that would be really good to capture and for us to know about.
There's another question about a system that has only commercial accounts. Do they need to fill out the survey?
No, you do not. If you're just, well, go ahead. Go ahead. I see Cheryl might want to correct me. Go ahead.
I have no poker face. Um, I would say fill out the survey and make it clear that you have all of there's those two questions that Jonathan alluded to about commercial. And so just let us know that all of your revenue is from commercial users, and it will be a very quick survey for you.
I see Danya shaking her head, so she agrees with that. Okay.
Great. There is a question about why are we using this Microsoft Forms platform rather than using CWIX? If a lot of the information is already in CWIX, why didn't we just make the survey in CWIX?
Yeah, so it wasn't the way that the survey is laid out, we couldn't use, I mean, maybe we'd be able to do it. It would be a lot more. We would basically wouldn't have been able to get the survey out this quickly, is really the short answer. CWIX isn't super user friendly from a building out survey standpoint, from what I understand. That suggestion had come up. It was the same thing of like, can we submit this in GeoTracker or something else? It's just those platforms are a lot more complicated for us to do that, for us to submit this kind of information.
And you don't need to log in now to do this survey too. It's a little more flexible about who can fill it out. I will say CWIX is very particular about who logs in and certifies.
Yeah, and it's literally the link. You can even, like I said, if you are sharing this with other people, you can share just the Excel version of the survey and the Microsoft Forms version of the survey. If you share that link, literally anyone can respond to it.
Mhm.
So I can't even screen out just agencies. So also be aware of that too. If you do
Yeah.
share the Microsoft Forms version of the survey, make sure you're just giving it to the appropriate entities. Otherwise, we're going to have some really random responses that we'll have to filter through.
Yeah, and this is not going to be used for compliance. This is an optional survey. Usually CWIX is used for mandatory reporting that is used for compliance assessment, which is not the case here. This is mainly information to inform the efforts that Jonathan described at the beginning. And it's also just very useful for anybody to be able to go in and look at the data once it's available. It's not just the State Water Board that can use it. It's going to be anybody that wants to make a presentation for your board about how your rates compare to other rates around the state and how your agency's rate growth has compared to other similar agencies. That makes all that information available at your fingertips.
Yeah, that's correct. And in the end, it's all going to be available on the California Open Data Portal. We'll also try to process the data a little ahead of time so that it's in a little bit more of a user-friendly, readable format too.
Great. I have a couple of more questions myself, if it's okay. There is a question number 37 that asks, if your agency bills by water use, does this number vary year over year? I wasn't sure what that meant. Does that mean does the variable part of the bill get adjusted to reflect water use, or what are you asking there?
Yes, it's funny as we're going through this, Cheryl had the same question.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. Yeah, what we're talking about here, or my interpretation here, is that if you bill by water use, essentially are you accounting for the increased level of cost into the next year? So are you raising that water use rate or whatever it is from one year to the next? Or are you, holding it, does it stay the same for like a 5-year period and then you increase it? Something to that. That's how,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, I did not
yeah.
get that from this. Okay, so are basically the fee per volumetric use of water, is that changing over time?
Yes, is that
Okay,
changing? Yeah, that's
okay,
what I think we're trying to ask here. Yeah.
okay, great. Thanks for that
Mhm.
clarification. And then questions 52 through 59 ask about the cost of like water. Yeah, here we go. Electricity. Is that because you're going to then subtract that off from the rates that folks report?
Well, so we're actually, because we're asking for individual rates by year already. A lot of this costs the non-wastewater charges per customer. One of the other reasons why we're asking this is to get an idea of what are the other fees that people are kind of facing on a monthly basis. It's like the questions that we have about median income. We're kind of what we're really trying to get at here, right? Is if we start looking to do wastewater system infrastructure improvements, right? If those costs got completely borne out by the ratepayers, like what would that do to their bills on a monthly basis? And it kind of already, what is the sort of status quo? Are they already being charged a lot? It's this kind of information that's useful for us to kind of look to when
Okay.
we're saying like, hey, we need more investment. We need some outside investment here.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
So folks should not wrap these up together when they fill out the survey. They should only include the sewer service charges on the
Yes, that's ideal. Yeah, if
question.
they're able to,
Okay,
yeah, yeah,
great. Okay, I wasn't
yeah.
sure. And then I also had a question just about the units here. So this specifies an annual basis. On the individual tabs that you have in the Excel sheet, it does ask for just the wastewater user rate, and there's a dollar amount. And are those supposed to all be in an annual rate? Or because then you also have a question about like, are you billing monthly or quarterly? I wasn't sure if you were going to match those up or if you
Mm,
could specify annual here.
Specify average. I think we're just looking for it. This is really just average annual rate is what we're kind of looking at. Just wrap it up into a
Okay,
single. Yeah,
annual. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if it's possible to add that, but maybe it would be helpful to put it in an FAQ if not, that this
Okay.
should be annual, regardless of what you answered, like if you're billing monthly or quarterly, please convert to annual when you fill out this section of the
Yeah,
survey.
and you can also just specify if you don't want to do that, if you have a simpler way, like I don't know, if it's like faster to fill it out for people, you can type in an answer here. So you can
Oh,
also
you
just,
can. Okay.
yeah, so you can just tell us what your units are. Just
Okay,
just let
great.
us know. Yeah,
Okay, wonderful.
thank you. I was gonna mention that to other people too, that I realize we don't always specify units for some questions. So where you can type it in, just let us know what it is that you're
Okay.
using, and we can always calculate it out and figure it out. For basically, however we need to present the data, we can figure it out.
Okay, but it's going to be assumed annual
Yeah,
if it's
yes, yeah,
specified.
yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
We're starting to get a couple more questions in the chat. One is asking, their agency charges a variable rate and a fixed rate. Would a flat rate be the same as a fixed rate?
Is a flat rate the same as a fixed rate? That's a good question, and I would interpret it a flat rate and a fixed rate as being the same thing. Um, and I am, if anyone wants to correct me on that, if any of our other panelists have an opinion on that, go ahead and add it in. I would interpret them as being the same thing, right? Yeah.
And wanted to highlight a question that I typed an answer to. Someone was asking for more information about Cal and Virus Screen. And so I put a link in the Q&A feature. Cal and Virus Screen is a tool that OEHA, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, provides. And it pulls together data sets, including the census and measures of vulnerabilities of communities with data sets that show the pollution burden to communities. And so it's a nice data set that we look at to understand how vulnerable communities are to pollution.
Any other questions? Well, I think we can end it here if there aren't. If you have, like I say, if you have any other questions or there is some nuanced aspect of this that you don't think we're getting, please reach out, email us, and we'll try to get back to you. Because that information really is helpful.
And we are committed to having an FAQ document. So if we start to hear questions multiple times, we're going to create an FAQ and we'll post a link to that. It will probably be posted along in conjunction with CASA, and we'll keep it as up to date as quickly as we can.
Yeah, and I was also going to add, I'll probably be sending out some reminders throughout the month to everybody. So just as a heads up, please get this survey in. And I'll also include links to CASA's FAQ and a link probably to the recording of this webinar in case you need to go back and listen to anything again.
Great. And we'll also try to take some of the questions that were in the chat today and convert them over to the FAQ so that we have that log. Really, a lot of thanks to everyone for their participation today and to the Water Board and Mary for being able to navigate that discussion on how to navigate the questionnaire. I think this is something folks will be able to do. We have about 6 weeks. We'll have this living FAQ document, and folks will be available to provide support if you need any on answering these fine detailed questions. So with that, virtual round of applause for Jonathan and Cheryl and Mary, and we'll look forward to interacting with you all in the future. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.
All right.
And
Thank you,
applause
everybody.
for all of our participants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.